when I first started with kind of the gig economy was really definitely from an employer perspective. The gig, for me, it's hiring from the gig economy. Started off with freelancer. It started off in Hong Kong because Hong Kong, it was very difficult to actually hire good programming talent. There's just not that many in Hong Kong to begin with. It's unlike China. China, there's so many. There's tons of them, but in Hong Kong, there's not. And so I really just kind of started off my path for that, building my remote team, starting off with hiring people from the gig economy as freelancers, slowly building my team, and getting to a point where I had a team of like over 50 people on staff, and slowly moving them from gig into more of like a permanent role. And having that transition was definitely not easy, because people are thinking like a freelancer, and then now you're saying, now don't think like a freelancer. I want you value you as a full-time employer. How can we make that transition? But prior to that, like hiring and the challenges of like hiring good people from the gig economy, I found difficult. And so we definitely had to build a set of processes that helped us weed out. And I'm sure I'll talk about, one of the great things about the gig economy now is you have a lot of choice. You have a lot of choice, almost too much. And you need to, and for a small company, that's great, but also we may not necessarily know how to weed them out. And so we took a space approach to that. And I can share with that a little bit more, but that was my initial kind of interaction with the gig economy.
Paul, what about you?
Yeah, I wrote about it in the book. I was working full time and I was burnt out, and I was working on a Saturday late at night, and I wanted to spend time with my family. And I reached out and got a virtual assistant. A friend of mine who is the CEO of a startup had always been saying, hey, you should try this virtual assistant thing. You look a little busy. And I got a virtual assistant. It was the first time that I reached out and started engaging someone who had the time and the skills to help me achieve something. And so in my obsessive compulsiveness, I went all in and I started trying all of the platforms and all of the services, not only in my personal life, not only the services on the consumer side, but I started doing it professionally. I started taking money out of my own pocket to help me get my work done, because one, it was more efficient. It allowed me some more time to read or retrain myself or spend time with my family. But I found that I didn't have skills that other people had. And so I got better results as I started doing it, and slowly became to realize that the way I was working or had been working for the past 20 years was broken, and sort of followed that thread and continuing to follow that thread, and help organizations start to see that, independent workers and freelancers are a critical part of your company and is talent that you need to bring in, because talent has a choice. The top talent that you want in your company may not want to be held captive under an employment agreement. They may want to work on a project basis, and we're seeing more and more of that every day. Just because you've hired someone and now they're sitting captive as an employee doesn't mean you have the best expert in the role that can provide value to your company. And so that one experience of hiring that virtual assistant changed everything for me.
Oh, Edie?
So I'm a career management consultant, so I've always been a gig worker, essentially. And what I love about it is the diversity of the work that I get to do, and the fact that I get to bring my whole self to work, right? So I get to use all of the skills that I have. So one day I'm developing a performance management process for a company. The next day I'm designing an internal talent mobility strategy, and the next day I'm writing an article around the future of work. It's all different, but most importantly, I get to play to my passions, right? I get to choose work that I'm deeply passionate about, that I have experience in doing. But kind of similar to Paul, a few years ago, I also started experiencing with the gig on the outside. And I was kind of looking a way to leverage my time and my talent. And so I started engaging gig workers to help me in areas where I wasn't an expert. So I'm not great at doing PowerPoint presentations, but it turns out there are a ton of people out there that are really creative and really passionate and really good at what they do. And it frees me up to do work where I can add more value for my client. And so I learned that, you know, we have to break down our work and realize where we play to our strengths and where we add value, and then let gig workers help us in other aspects.
All right, so I'll offer my story, and then Petra will come back to you, and you can try to corral this group in following. But my first gig experience, I was 8 years old. I had a paper route, and I had a baseball game, and I had to deliver the papers that afternoon. And I got the kid next door to do the paper route for me so I could go to the baseball game. And I think I offer that as a simple example just because I think we way overcomplicate this. You know, in what we're going to declare as the modern gig economy and some of the different things that are there. My first genuine experience was with Elance, who's the precursor to Upwork now, and it was translation services. I was living overseas, and I had a document that needed to be translated into 11 languages. And I remember, you know, my headquarters operation was closed. I needed to get this out the next day. And I was panicked. How am I going to do this? I don't know people who speak all of these languages and what's there. And I had a relationship with Fabio, and because of some things that we were doing, I was like, let me try this Elance platform and see, can I find? And it wasn't finding one translation department. It was finding 11 people who each spoke 2 languages, English and their native tongue. And they were able to do the translation, get it done for me almost immediately. And that gave me my aha that, all right, there's a completely different way to open things up. And that was 10 plus years ago. So I think it's my caution to everyone is be really careful in over-engineering this. This is just about getting things done. Paul, you said, you know, getting an assistant to book a weekend for you because you just want to try something different. I think that becomes something that we all need to really just challenge ourselves on from the beginning. So Petra, back to you to try and corral us as we go forward.
I mean, one of the things you said, John, yesterday, and I think Yin said as well, I'm writing some articles on, you know, the experiments that are going on with remote work around the world. I mean, Twitter and Google and a lot of the Bay Area companies are now saying, hey, everybody work from home. And it's putting stress on the, you know, traditional organizational structures. So I wanted to write an article, and I'm here in Detroit giving a talk this afternoon, and didn't have time to really dig in. And I used a service of a friend of mine, Steve, called Verblio. And it's, you know, a ton of writers that are experts. And last night I put it in around 8 o'clock, and this morning at 9 I woke up and there was an amazing article based on a brief that I created. And so I think, to your point, it's about the work. You focus on what you need. And there's 7 billion, I'm just always go back to, there's 7 billion people on the planet. And I'm not an expert in a lot of things. You know, I talk often, I have dyslexia. And so writing narrative things is really hard for me. So I've had to try to find other experts to help me get my content out, get my thoughts out. And so I think you're right. Like, find small things where it may not be your strength, as Edie was saying, and reach out and start, you know. Engage a freelancer to help you out.
Paul, I just want to build on what you said, and then we can move on to the next question, which is, I think the fundamental thing for everybody who's listening is that we need to stop thinking about just a job in its whole entity. And if we focus on the work that has to get done, and then let people do the work where that's their expertise, then we will really increase the productivity and the quality of the work that we're doing. You look at, you know, everybody asks, why is it that technology is increasing, but productivity is staying flat? It's because we keep trying to work in the same way, despite the fact that we have new resources, new technologies available to us. Let's leverage the technology to help us work differently and think about work in its component parts, and not always it's, you know, kind of one entire box thing.
Yeah, thank you for adding that on top, Edie. And maybe, you know, John, you were so enthusiastic before about, you know, this opportunity. So if it's such a great opportunity, what are actually the barriers that still exist to being part of this gig economy and to working like this?
Yeah, I think there's some interesting pieces in there, Petra. I think the first and largest barrier, going to kind of what we started on, is just trying. People have labeled the gig economy as this new thing that is something different. We've got fear of change inside of a lot of people, inside organizations. I think Paul and I sat on a panel that was about the gig economy, and we asked the audience, how many people have tried it. And so these are people who are studying the area, and you still had less than half the room who had done things. So the number one barrier to me is people being willing to just try something, to test something. We've become so process oriented, especially in large organizations, that you have the command and control structure of what's there, and we've forgotten to let people think differently and try things. So I think that's one end. I think on the other side of things, there are some social structures that we have to think about. In the US in particular right now, we don't have the same social safety net that you have throughout Europe. That if I choose to be an independent worker and I need long-term disability coverage because something's happened, is that insurance available for me, or am I stuck? I think a lot right now of the independent workers I interact with are people who have some flexibility, either because they've created some wealth, or maybe they have benefits from their spouse. And they're able to get the things that they need. So I'm excited to see some organizations in the US. There's one called IPSI, who is starting to provide and make access to some of those social safety nets available. But then I think we have to also be really careful about our governments coming in and declaring how you're allowed to work. We've got AB 5 out in California right now that is really challenging a lot of people in ways. So I think it's, if you're not experimenting and you're not trying and you're trying to set all the rules before you've even experienced something, the odds of your rules being inappropriate or not fit for purpose is just really high. So I think more than anything, my encouragement is get out there and start experimenting, testing some things. And for our policymakers, whether that's in your company or it's in your government, be careful setting the rules until you've tried and seen what works, what doesn't work. This is about freedom, not about control.
I think that, John, to build on, I want to address some of the questions in the channel. Marcy, there are a bunch of companies. When I was at Microsoft and we started our program, I was very public about the idea that we had started a freelance pilot and started to learn on where freelancers and on-demand workers could be valuable. And there are tons of Fortune 500 companies that are starting programs as well. I know Samsung's been public. And the thing that I learned is I can't tell you the 100 organizations, because a lot of them have HR and legal departments that don't allow them to talk publicly, but they're all starting pilots. And I think, Ross, you had a really good question in the channel about unlearning. One of the reasons I wrote the book, for me, because it was in my head and I was answering so many questions, I just wanted to write it down once, was that there's a mindset change. You have to let go of control in a lot of ways, like John said. And that's a really big deal when you're accountable for something professionally. And I think the org chart starts to move away. Like, you don't think in org charts. And I think for 20 years of my career, I thought in org charts, and you looked at the titles and there was a hierarchical command and control structure. When you start working this way, it's pure and it's about the work. Here's this outcome I want. Let me get the right experts. The freelancers come in, like Edie said, with a diversity of skills and really focus on the work. They aren't concerned with, your title. They could care less. It's about the work. They don't care about the org structure of what team is doing this and what's the ORPI and all these things that we put in to try to explain how work gets done. It's just about the project. And so I find that the collaboration in this space with freelancers is a lot more pure in that it's focused in work. And so to answer your question, Petra, I think org structures and those things that come along with org structures of getting promoted and the things that you do that may or may not be pure to the outcome that you want, or some of the inhibitors. And then I look, we're talking to HR folks, and Enrique, I've got a podcast coming out with him. HR people traditionally have been focused on compliance. I can't tell you how many times I talk to HR people in the company that were trying to educate me on how to work with freelancers. And I'm like, to John's point, have you hired one? They're like, no, but my job is to follow these policies and compliance and make sure that you, employee worker, are compliant. And in those kind of environments, any transformation is hard. And so I encourage every HR person listening specifically to go out and try to implement a pilot, or yourself, go out and hire a freelancer and think about what it could do for you, your team, and your company.
Yeah. So one of the points as well that I'm hearing in a lot of your answers so far is as well that this is a job. So we have to manage as well those people. And I think maybe Hoyin, for you, you're doing that already within your company. So how do you actually manage your remote teams as normal workforce?
Yeah. So it is definitely a challenge. I mean, it's managing freelancers, and it's definitely a challenge in itself. And then managing them remotely is also even more of a challenge, especially the rest of the team is remote. So
yeah, part of the barrier as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So that means everyone's on the same level playing field, but they all have to collaborate as a team in a way that does. So what we've kind of we've done a lot of experimentation, and we've kind of found ways to really work well. One of the things that we try to do is when we before hiring gig workers, we do like a 3-day, 5-day test with them. So it's paid. It's a paid test. So the funnel, the recruit funnel works like we put out the job ad. They come in, and then we might give them a test, we do videos, etc. And then we just do like a 5-day trial test with them that we pay them, and we give them like a small project to do. And through that small project, it literally might be something that it might not even be 100% useful. It's just literally just to see how well they work with us. And through that process, we learn more about like their ability to communicate, how well that they can work with the team. And that what we found is to have that leads to the highest chance of success. So by the time, so that they understand how we work and we understand how they work in a very time. And then you pretty much see exactly. So it's like a free trial. It's like not a free trial, but it's a trial. It's like a demo. And that it's like communication is just so key, and having very key milestones, identifying the things that you need. But a lot of times what we found that fails for a lot of gig workers is like they're sometimes like not part of the team, or they don't get enough communication. So we try to include them as much as part of the team as much as possible. Sometimes they may not want to ask so many questions. They may feel that they're not part of the team. So they're part of our daily stand-ups. They're part of we treat them as if they are, literally like a teammate.
Because they are teammates. One of the things you said that I think is really interesting, and HR people should listen, nowhere in that process did he say, I looked at their resume, right? They put a task out, a job out. The talent comes in and performs the job, and you rate the person on their ability to do the expert work. And I think that's a fundamental change in how I engage with freelancers around the world. I don't go look at their resume. I don't care. I look at the reviews. I look at their portfolios. I take referrals from other experts. And I think, Louise, you asked a very good question. How do you keep people engaged? These are humans. We're all humans trying to do good work. And so if you're a good human and communicate with people and have work and you build your network, and it's about building your network, and a lot of freelancers now come with their own network behind them. So if you hire, engage one designer, the chances that they have other designers that augment the type of design work that they do is high. And so you're tapping into networks of talent. And these are humans. We all want to provide value, whether I'm a captive employee or I'm a freelancer.
Well, to your point, Paul, and it hits on Louise's question of the engagement, ask the individual. If you've never engaged a freelancer and now you've got one, ask them, what's the best way to keep you engaged? I want you to feel like you're part of the team, part of what we're trying to get accomplished here right now. This is my first time. Like, we're afraid to be vulnerable in so many ways that if you just open yourselves up a little bit, you'll find that this is not as scary as a lot of people make it out to be.
Well, and I think that also you have to treat them as part of the team. I mean, to Paul's point is they need to understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, what kind of impact. They all want to have impact. I mean, they're not just working, right? They want to feel that connection to the outcome that they're trying to achieve. And so helping them connect and understand the purpose of what they're doing, I think is important for everybody, regardless of how you work.
And understanding.
Hoyin, yeah.
So I just have one point, really quick point. I'd say like one advantage of gig versus full-time is like, you can't tell a full-time person to say, hey, I want to trial you for 1 week. Like they're like, well, job, I have a lot of like associations, like you can't just do that. But for gig, you can trial them. So you can trial them for real before actually, you know, going dive deep. So, and to me, that trial period, you can learn a lot.
Yeah, you know, they're also trialing you. Like this idea, and I think there was a good question in the channel. Like a lot of companies don't realize that a vast majority of their workforce is independent workers, and so there's this us and them. One of the things that I experienced when I moved from being a captive employee to a freelancer was how the freelancers are happy. Many, in my experience, many of the freelancers are happy, as Edie said, to be independent workers, to be able to go and do a diverse set of work, to not have a lot of the shackles of employment around them on who they work with and how and when, and a lot of those things, and are highly productive. And so, you know, the idea that everything in the talent economy is transactional is not accurate. Like these are people, and I have relationships with all of the freelancers. I have a great researcher who has a PhD in India, and when the holidays come, we share pictures of children. Like, these are humans. And so this idea that this technology has somehow dehumanized us, or people who start participating in the gig economy or the freelance economy who try to treat it as transactional will fail. If you come into it, like John said, and you're empathetic and you come into it providing, like Edie said, context and want people to be successful, and you're curious about what they can provide to your company, it's limitless on what you can accomplish. And so I think some people try to come in and say, look, I'm going to save some money and this is all transactional. You're going to fail.
And to the comment from Anika that's on there, if you're an organization that says you're not allowed to be part of the team and I'm gonna quarantine you off somewhere else, your ability to attract that next freelancer is going to be virtually nil, because the community talks to one another, and so your reputation comes out. So Glassdoor happens for everyone in whatever format is going to be out there. So it's about having an open mind to looking at things differently. That compliance-centric focus is something that's just got to be let go of for a little while, and I think that's where HR organizations have for so long been focused on the FTE and the internal workforce only. Your internal customers are begging you to help understand how to tap into this gig economy, how to do things differently. They're all frustrated if a search takes too long or they don't find the right person. They're hoping you can find alternatives, and they're hearing about this. Yeah, they're listening in on this channel or one of the other sessions that's going on to say, how do I tap into this? How do I do things differently? And if you can be that person that makes it safe for them to try something different, then they're going to come back to you that much more.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I see Hoyin is back online and still talking about, you know, internal and the remote teams. So what are actually some solutions that you can give us in managing these hybrid remote teams? No, I don't hear you, Hoyin.
We lost
So
Okay.
I've been looking at like the way how remote teams, like remote work in general, for quite some time, and I had a remote literally like 4 or 5 years ago before it started to really become a trend this year. And for the biggest challenge in remote right now is actually hybrid teams, because most companies are not going to be fully remote like that. Like that's too harsh of a change. So they're going to start hiring gig workers first, and that inherently creates a hybrid team. And a hybrid team means you have some group of people that are co-located and some people that are remote, which may start with just some gig workers. The problem with that is you have two cultural conflicting conflicts or modes of doing work. And they, even full-time FTEs that are working remotely, sometimes considered as like, not second tier, but just, oh, they're over there. You know, oh, there's people that work remotely. Like they're just not forgotten, but not in mind all the time. And so that's a huge, it's becoming a huge problem now. So the way how we found that matched with the cultures together, I'll just quickly talk about this, is found that hosting online events is like a really good way to do that. You can Zoom, you can use our platform, Remo, it doesn't matter which one you use, but having these sort of webinars and afterwards doing some networking afterwards puts everyone on the same table, on the same kind of level playing field. And that talk kind of causes like, really creates context for people to actually talk to each other. It's like basically it's an icebreaker, but better than a happy hour online, like, you know, Zoom happy hour, because sometimes you talk about, but this provides context to talk about. And we found that to be extremely effective. In fact, we work with a company in Colombia that has been using our platform in that way.
Great. And I think, Edie, you have been working closely and studying as well the external gig economy. What lessons did you learn from that you applied, you know, in your book as well?
I think the idea of breaking work into projects is kind of one of those, one of the key issues. And for me, one of the key kind of research points is that people want diversity and choice in their work. They want to be able to choose. And I think, you know, Paul was talking earlier that like work is broken and we need to think about finding a new way to work. So in the Inside Gig, my book, we talk about applying this concept internally within your organization. So we, you know, just like the talent platforms work, we can have the technology if we think about our people not as a job title and that's all you are and that's all you do, but understand all the skills that people bring to the table and let them opt into work that follows their passion, where they have a skill set that maybe they have that they don't use in their day job, or that they want to grow and develop in an area. So letting people choose the work that they have, they now then get to play with their passion. They get to bring their full selves to work and really identify the kind of work that brings meaning to them. And then move work around, right? So if it's all on a project, then we can shift work around. We can work with our manager and say, you know, I'm really great at these things, and I'm taking a lot of time and I'm not adding a lot of value. Is there a way to resource, outsource, or simply are we doing things that we no longer need to be doing? And so how do we shift work around to make room for other projects that I can then use skills that I have that I don't use in my regular day job, or you know, just things that I'm passionate about. So we can take the idea of the external gig economy and bring it inside of the company, I think, to really unleash the hidden talent within a company.
Well, Edie, I think you're hitting on a really important point. And let's just break down an element. If we all recognize more and more people are working in the gig economy, but in a population level, we have less and less people in the workforce at the very macro. That means the full-time employees inside your company are doing side hustles. They're working outside your organization.
My favorite topic.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do an internal gig.
It used to be called moonlighting.
Yeah, if the internal learning and development investment in me has gone down, and I've gone out to take a class on blockchain because I'm fascinated by it, but there isn't a blockchain project for me to work on, I'm out doing my side hustle. I'm picking something up along the side. And this is, again, a real challenge for HR compliance officers in that, ooh, geez, from a wage and hour standpoint, can I let them do a gig internally? But I think it's Edie, the points that you made of allowing people to kind of break off some of their time. And if you're not willing to recognize that they're going to do that, then you're missing out. So the willingness to rethink how do we structure things, especially for your high potential talent, the people who are just really moving through the organization, if you can't bounce them from one role to another, embrace it. Talk to them about what they'd like to try. Is there a project team that you'd like to be on, instead of, you know, the old model of you've been voluntold, sorry, Paul, you're now on this project because we decided that's right for you. I don't care if you're interested or not.
Yeah, I think there's a thing, Edie, that you said. We're no longer in a space where we have technology issues. We have all of the technology we need to transform the way we work. We have a management structure issue and more compliance people in large organizations, and actually people who can try to transform. And so, you know, back to your, you know, comment, John, organizations, I'm going to hold you captive. I'm paying you money. I get to decide what you do. In my experience over the past 5 years, top talent is opting out. And so I fear sometimes that organizations look at their metrics and they say, well, look, I've filled these roles and I have these people and my poll scores were good. And my poll scores are good because the people I have are appreciative of being held captive. And a lot of top talent, the people that you need to transform your business, are just opting out of the system.
Right. And I think that's because that they don't get to do those projects that engage them. Like, why are they going out and doing these side gigs? Because you aren't giving them the opportunity. I mean, there's a well-known saying that it's a lot easier to get a different job in a new company than it is to do something different within your own company. If we don't get smart and start letting our people follow their passions, do work that they're interested in, have opportunities for learning and growth, you know, even if it's bite-sized learning opportunities by working on a different project, if we don't start providing that experience to our own employees, they are going to leave.
I push on that because I don't think that companies can provide that experience. I don't think it's an HR, like I think there's some basic learning and training you should provide, but people are now taking it upon themselves to go figure out what training they need, whether it's inside or outside the company. And
I absolutely, they're using on-demand learning.
That's right.
To, let's say, blockchain, John's example. You know, I've gone out and learned blockchain. Then now, how do I get the opportunity to use that skill? And if you provide open project opportunities to anybody, regardless of where you sit in your organization, and we've seen this work in many companies, then I can say, hey, I've got these skills that I don't use in my day job. Is there a project that I can do within my own company? And when you do it within your own company, let me be clear, most people aren't getting paid extra money.
But they don't.
The money is moving around.
But this is the thing. We go back to this conversation. Like when I find hyper curious people that want to learn, people that are curious and, you know, they want to learn. It's not a conversation about compensation. It's not a conversation about title. A lot of people are letting those things go, yet the organization, the compliance fabric of an organization wants to have conversations about title and wages and all these things. And they're just saying, I want to learn. And Ashley, to your point, companies need to embrace and have policies that support non-competitive side hustles. Just fact. Like the whole moonlighting thing, all the employment agreements that are weaponized when you know people want to use them against employees that are doing non-competitive things. I'm not saying that you have the right on your company's dime to create a side business that competes, but you do have the right to go and learn. And not look, I don't learn by online learning courses. I just don't. I struggle with sitting down, but I do learn by doing. And so I'll go and build a bunch of random websites that'll never see the light of day, but I'm learning development skills, design skills. And so companies need to actively support side hustles and celebrate them. Celebrate the work that people are doing outside and bringing back. The Talent Economy podcast episode that Enrique did with me, he talks about his experience of having a side hustle that was his passion and what the company did to him when they found out.
So this idea of these internal gigs is that people can work on project-based opportunities within their company for the purposes of learning. I actually think that inside gigs are the perfect opportunity for learning and growth. We had at Cisco Systems was a really great example. When they were moving from a server-based company to a cloud-based company, they looked out into the labor market and they said, oh my goodness, there aren't enough cloud-based companies that we cloud-based talent that we need in our company to succeed in our business strategy. So they allowed people to work on internal projects where they would build that capability within by people working and experimenting and contributing to projects in that area so that they could build those skills while people were doing work. So I call it the learning while doing, which, Paul, you said, you know, is kind of your learning mode. I think a lot of people are like that, and companies can offer those opportunities. There are tons of managers out there with so many projects that they want to do that they can't get done because they don't have the talent on their team.
Maybe
you know what? That talent is with their company.
Sorry, Edie. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So maybe like what has been discussed now in this question and answer is maybe something that Ross asked in the chat. So maybe it's good for the whole panel to answer. And he's asking, are you and your future workforce ready, and how do you know? So it's a bit connected with the things that have been mentioned. So are you ready, and how do you know you're ready? Maybe that's for all of you a question, being as well conscious a bit on the time that we have. Maybe John, you want to start again?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick off. I think we're ready in pockets. To try and think that everyone across our organization is fully prepared is an unrealistic expectation. So in a large organization, we have pockets where we are experimenting, where we're testing, and where we're learning, and people are getting very comfortable. And what we're trying to do is to highlight those stories, to share those experiences, to make sure that they're visible, to then mentor someone who we think could do and has the capacity to try, to just give it a shot. Let's see what we can do. So I think that the future-proofing, getting our compliance team to kind of rethink what we see a lot of, and we did it ourselves, is we changed out our CHRO. We brought someone from the business in who was accountable for delivering outcomes versus someone who was creating HR policy. Now, they have plenty of policy people around them that are able to help them make sure that they follow rules and we don't have lawsuits that we don't want coming at us. But we now have a head of that function who is challenging the business and challenging their internal HR function and saying, that's just not how the real world operates. I need you to think about this. This is what the business is trying to get done. And it's changed the language in the organization to be more about the language of the business, what we're trying to accomplish as an organization, as opposed to policy, compliance, rules, regulations. So I think you have that. I think, Paul, you made a point earlier about moving from the hierarchy into the network and recognizing that change is happening. We appointed a new CEO back in October. Peter has several people on his leadership team who do not report to him, that report 3 or 4 layers down in the organization. And he's just saying to the company, get ready, this is a different way that we're going to operate. And are people uncomfortable that this meeting is taking place and everyone with their title is not there? Sure, there are plenty of people who are uncomfortable.
Cancel the meeting. Sorry.
Another one. We're getting much
strong opinion on meetings. So.
Yeah, how do we just make ourselves more efficient as a business and having honest conversations about what we're trying to get done in how I fit in a structure. So to us, those are the things that we're trying to do to make ourselves as a business far more ready.
I have said for years that, as I've talked a lot about the future of work, that I don't understand why compliance owns the talent in your company and not the HR organization. And particularly as you look at some of the high-skilled talent that is participating and contributing to really important outcomes within your company. You need to manage all of your talent as one entity and to let a compliance organization or procurement have a say about how that talent operates or who that talent is. It can destroy a lot of the value that those people bring to the company.
They're not focused on the value. That's the thing, is that they're focused on the compliance and the rules and the policy to keep the value captive. And Michael, I want to address something you said. It is a radical position. I have a belief that companies should understand people and their talents, where they can provide value to the firm or to the organization, and where those external things, where they might find passion, you also bring that value back. Enrique talks about it on the podcast. His non-competitive side hustle was him learning and taking that value back to the company. I know lots of people whose side hustles, are non-competitive and bring tremendous value back to their organizations, to act like they don't exist. And by the way, just to have policies in place that make that person not feel safe and learning on the way that they need to learn. This idea like, oh, well, we have a learning program. We signed up with LinkedIn Learning, and that's the way we learn here in this organization. Well, good luck at attracting talent. Good luck at attracting the top talent, because I'm telling you, and I see it in the market, and it's one of the reasons that I, stepped out of corporate America, is top talent, the people that you really need inside your organization. One, are not going to be treated as second-class citizens. They're just not going to work with you. And two, they're not going to work in the archaic ways that many companies feel safe because they have all these policies and stuff. And so, yeah, you'll fill the seats maybe, but you won't have the people that you need to compete in the future.
Well, Paul, you said something there about know your talent. What I would challenge for anyone on the line whose company has a B2C business, you look at the amount of resources you put at knowing your consumers. You know whether they're going to buy, what time of day they're going to buy. You know how they're going to bundle products together. You know everything about their demographic profile, their behaviors. Now ask if you know the same amount about your workforce. It's a really sad commentary that we have taken so much time to understand that external customer, but we haven't taken the time to understand our internal workforce and point those same resources. You've already spent the money to do the learning. Just point it at your internal workforce and start learning who they are as people, what they're interested in. Do you even know what classes people on your leadership team have taken, your direct reporting team? What classes have they taken in the last year?
Yeah, this
something very simple. You just got to take that time.
Maybe here I would just give the word to Hoying as well to answer the question. So before we step into a new topic.
Can you guys
the question
hear me?
was, yeah. So the question was still if, I think we lost him now actually. Just now that he got the word.
Ready.
Okay. So, okay, then if he's not there, then something that was mentioned as well, Paul, and is actually, are you advocating for employees to work outside of work? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. Yeah, I'm advocating for organizations to understand and radically empower the people that they are paying. And so if my passion is doing a nonprofit, right, and I'm very passionate about this nonprofit work, then I should have some time, as long as I'm getting my job done. Again, when you go back to focusing on the work, right, that's the outcome. As a business, you should want specific outcomes that meet ROI and all the KPIs that you have, or now the OKRs that you have. Like, you should focus on that work. If that employee is delivering that work and all those nights and weekends reskilling themselves, that's probably the most amazing talent you have. But if you go and you look at your compliance and regulatory and all the stuff, they're breaking a bunch of rules. They don't feel safe, and there are no clear rules because the compliance organizations are trying to put sort of blunt constructs in place. And so, yes, I'm advocating that people should be able to learn in the way they want to learn. And by the way, have honest conversations with their organizations about what they're doing in a non-competitive way. And organizations can't handle that today. If I went to my HR person and said, hey, look, I'm really passionate about something, and I'm going to kind of do this. It's not competitive. Hey, I'm still going to deliver. I'm a high performer. I got high ratings last year, the year before. The organization, as Enrique will tell you, has an allergic reaction, and they walk you out the door. It doesn't matter how high performing you are. You have broken compliance rules.
Thank you, Paul. And we have Hoying back online. Sorry, Edie. Do you want to make a point just to answer to Paul quickly, Edie?
Yeah, I just want to marry kind of what John and Paul are talking about, which is, to John's point, if we really understand the talent that we have, if we understand not just what their skills are to do their job, but all the skills and experiences that they bring with them, and if we understand what their passions and what their interests are, we can do a better job of matching talent opportunities within the company that let them follow those passions and just, I think this era of thinking about just our job and only able to work in our team is where we really hold people back. So you can find those gigs on the outside, but you can also potentially contribute to really important work within your own company. Then, Hoyen.
Thanks. Yeah.
Sorry, you were on and off, so we continued.
Yeah. No, okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Cool. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think, it comes like more of a smaller business, like if applying for a gig workforce or working with the gig workforce is definitely much easier. But I would also say that it is also a pretty big challenge, even without all the compliance challenges. And I personally think that like the whole kind of digital nomadism and location independent kind of thing has started to kind of lead to more of an open gig workforce for us to kind of like employ them and get them on board. But it's still even a challenge, even at a small medium business or even a startup level. And so, yes, I think we are on the brink of kind of accepting it more. But I also think, as you guys have all kind of pointed out, I still think there is definitely some distance. Like there has to be a lot more education, a lot more changes in the way how, if it's like an internal gig, I think that's probably maybe a lot easier for sure. But if it's like an external individual, there's still, I think, a lot of challenges with that and how that person can kind of mesh with the compliance rules and the way how teams work. And, like I think there's definitely a lot of education that needs to be done, both not on the management side, but also within the teams. And I think that's something that I think is happening, and it will improve as time goes on.
I know there's an HR manager on this call. I don't know who you are, who heard all of the challenges and said, that's why we shouldn't do it. I mean, it's really hard. The people, we don't know them. There's all this risk. Can't handle it. That's called learning. One of the reasons I wrote the book is that engaging these people, learning to work remote, learning to have more fluid talent, learning to push against organizational boundaries and understand project work and not titles, that's the hard work you have to do. And it's hard. It is hard and it's challenging. And guess what, HR, it has risks. It has risks. But the only thing that's going to help reskill your workforce, it's the only thing that's going to allow you to bring talent in. And so, yes, you have to accept a certain amount of risk. And yes, you should put all the guardrails in. I'm not saying it's a Wild West. I'm saying do it responsibly, but start that learning. And start that learning now, because by the way, if you don't, there's going to be some startup that comes and disrupts your business because they did the hard things and started working that way and accepted the challenges as the only way to get great work done. And so,
Paul, I'd add to Priscilla's point on there, and the fact that this is hacking HR. We do have some of those HR managers who are trying, who are leading the way and fighting.
I said one.
Yeah,
I'd say all.
You called out one. The caution I would, or I guess the opportunity I would also encourage people to think about, inside every one of our businesses, we hear about how we need to become more agile. We need to be more flexible. We need to adapt to different things. Pause and just recognize that there's another side of the equation that also wants to be more agile, and that's the human. That's the worker, whether that's the manager who's leading a team who wants to be able to be more efficient in getting things done and not constrained by FTE only rules or things that are there, or it's the individual worker who feels trapped by something that they're doing and they want to learn something else and move forward. This notion of human agility versus corporate agility is something that I think if you can pause and think about it that way, you start recognizing that you're creating value for people inside the organization. And out of that, that's where you tap into their passions and you get the best engagement, you get the best performance. So big opportunities all around here.
Petra?
Yeah.
I
don't know if she's frozen.
Talking to myself, I was saying Paul and John already gave some great closing points. Maybe Edie and Hoying, do you want to add on that? Just so we can slowly wrap up and answer on this, what it was already said.
I think, just to build on what was said about, there's a lot of talent that wants to work on the things that they're deeply passionate about. So Paul made a point earlier that there's a lot of people out there who don't want to work for a company. And if you want to tap into the talent that you need for your business, you need to start to understand to work on their own terms. We have a phrase called the democratization of work that is happening today. It used to be that the power was all with the employer in our organizations. And today, particularly given our current labor market, that power is a bit more balanced, which gives employees more control and the ability to make more choice in what they do. So if they only want to work in a gig environment, then they can. And that makes it a lot harder for companies to access that kind of talent. To the extent that your company can create an environment that lets talent work in the way that they want to, that gives them more diversity and choice in the work that they do, whether that be taking a gig on the outside, whether that be a gig worker coming to work with you, whether that be creating internal gigs. It's really about understanding the changing dynamics of the workforce and the work environment that we have today, and getting your company future ready to help build that talent pipeline that you need for maybe it's a transformation that your organization is going through. And this idea of, well, compliance won't let me do it, that just isn't going to be a phrase that's going to work for very long, because you're not going to have the talent that you need to get your job done. So the goal is to really talk about what's right for the business. And there are risks to mitigate, absolutely. But I think coming to this with fresh thinking and working in partnership about what the business is really trying to achieve and what the reality is of the talent market out there, a lot of things are going to have to change. And I hope that this conversation has really raised a lot of awareness for everybody that's listening around the different options that you have to both unleash the talent that you have within your own company and access the talent that is available outside of your company to help you achieve your objectives.
So I'm going to go a little bit kind of off, a little bit, approach this a little bit differently here. So first of all, I think hiring gig is the best thing because from an employer standpoint, your talent pool is just massive. It's not, it's just like you're really restricting yourself, like, because after hiring from the gig workforce, I pretty much can pluck and pick the talent that is the best for the job that needs to be done. Because the gig, a lot of people want to work from home. A lot of people want to work remotely. So from an employer perspective, in fact, I have a different point of view. And this is speaking from the employer's perspective here. I think employing gig workers is the best because you actually have more choice. And with more choice, you actually have more relative leverage when it comes to that conversation because there's just a lot more choice. And so for me, I love hiring from a gig because I can get the best workers I can find. In fact, if you guys don't hire from the gig, I'm totally fine with that because then I've got to hire. So take time, please take your time, and that should give you a sense of like how great it actually is, because it's not saturated right now. When everyone comes in and everyone's starting hiring from the gig, then it's going to be competitive. It's going to start being competitive. So please take your time, guys. Please.
Thank you,
That's
everyone. Paul, Edie, John, and Hoyin. It was great to have you on a panel. Sorry for all the technical problems, but here we are at the end. So thank you for sharing. Everybody can connect to the speakers as well on LinkedIn and continue the conversation at some other time there. Have a good rest of the day.
I want to give a shout out to Enrique and Hacking HR for putting this all together.
Amen. Join your local chapter.
Bye, everyone.